from my memory forever! Yes! Let this be our final battle!
Multiple complicated origins of Skeletor from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe! Explained in detail. When Mattel launched the Masters of the Universe line of toys from 1981 to 1983, little did they know that the franchise would become a giant in the years to come. They soon became much bigger than the usual action figure-based toys, and the stories of He-Man and the evil Skeletor began to develop. The toys came with mini-comics that had some information about the characters, so the kids knew how to play with them. It soon became a popular cartoon, and it was fun to watch the stories of He-Man and his allies unfold as they battled the evil plans of Skeletor and his minions.
This may sound hard to believe, but this is Skeletor.
Skeletor slowly became one of the most iconic villains of all time, but there remained some serious inconsistencies regarding his storyline. There are times when the demon made no sense at all because of these origin stories that confused the fans. He was initially portrayed as an alien invader with plans of conquering Eternia, and soon the story spiraled into everything from an interdimensional being to someone with a seriously disfigured face and anger issues.
Of the fountain myself. By drinking its waters, I could become all-powerful.
From the mini-comics to the cartoons and the live-action movie, Skeletor has undergone a sea of change regarding his origin, mannerisms, powers, and even his sinister plans. In this video, we will try to explain the details of his complicated origin because, as we said, he still remains one of the greatest villains who provided tons of entertainment for many people's childhoods.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
This inevitable moment will transpire before your eyes, even as He-Man himself.
Masters of the Universe Mini-Comics. As we have already mentioned, the first line of toys was accompanied by the first mini-comics, the pre-Filmation series. These were more like miniature storybooks that had a single image per page with a brief description of the character and their storyline. The differences between this version of Skeletor and the later media is stark. For instance, you have no royal court of Eternia or King Randor and Queen Marlena. He-Man is shown as a champion fighter in a tribe of primitive jungle dwellers. This was the first available story arc of Skeletor, and it showed him as an entity from another plane of existence. This place was filled with more of his kind, but a hole in the dimensional wall somehow got him into the world of Eternia. One of his main motives, according to this pamphlet, was to somehow reopen the door between his planet and Eternia. This would allow his race to conquer the latter, fueling his reasons for seeking the powers of Castle Grayskull. While we see a version of Skeletor's backstory, a lot of questions are left unanswered. We get no details about Skeletor's own people and what his status was among them. It would have been exciting to learn more about their motives and appearances, but all we got was a panel that hinted that they were averse to showing their faces just like Skeletor. The storyline is particularly short-lived, and the continuity is abruptly cut short by the other versions.
Grayskull has fallen, He-Man. To me!
After the cancellation of the Filmation animated show, another mini-comic followed, and this one has several contradictions with the Filmation series. This time around, Skeletor was portrayed as King Randor's long-lost brother Keldor. We learn about this startling truth in the story titled The Search for Keldor. Prince Adam and Randor are looking for Keldor, and after learning about their mission, Skeletor is seen stating how they must never discover the real truth. Keldor had disappeared many years ago, and this was caused due to his fascination with magic. One of his experiments accidentally got him lost in another realm. King Randor comes very close to finding Keldor, but Skeletor interrupts the process desperately. He is defeated, but he manages to ensure that they never find out any more about the long-lost brother. While it is not clearly mentioned that the two characters are the same, it is quite obvious from Skeletor's frantic attempt to cover up the search. It also syncs with the fact that Keldor had vanished into another dimension while he was training to master the skills of sorcery. The writer Stephen Grant later revealed that they were never going to blatantly let it out that Skeletor was Keldor, but it was a concept that Mattel had come up with.
I said to prepare Koldar for freezing. Now go prepare him.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The 1980s cartoon presented Skeletor as the main villain, and he is a fiendish creature from another dimension. We see him as an evil warlord who is the ruler of the dark side of Eternia from his base in the Snake Mountain. He was trained by another powerful warlord. This man was called Hordak.
A kniving claim jumper? Eternia is mine to conquer! Mine!
Skeletor started off as the second in command to the mighty Hordak, but when the opportunity presented itself, he betrayed his mentor, establishing Snake Mountain in the process. In fact, one of the episodes showed that Skeletor was the one to build the Snake Mountain. The series was a delightful watch, and it started off presenting Skeletor as a vile, sinister personality.
Oh, my people never steal.
Silence, you soon-to-be prisoner!
However, the show had to change the narrative to make him into a comical and incompetent villain because the target audience was children. At times, it treated Skeletor as a pantomime villain, even though a few episodes tried to hint at his great evil powers.
Are you ready to kneel now? Proud.
The live-action movie in 1987. When Canon Film came up with a PG-rated feature film version of Masters of the Universe, they had the chance to bring up the much darker version of Skeletor. They did so successfully, and Frank Langella's performance as Skeletor was praised from all the quarters. The campy, comical connotations to this ruthless villain were a thing of the past, and this film had a scene where Skeletor incinerated one of his henchmen simply for failing him.
Throw down your weapons, or you die.
There is also far more depth added to him, evident from his conversations with He-Man, where he inquires about the loneliness of being good, and if it is similar to the loneliness of evil. Instead of the commonly used purple attire, we see Skeletor donning an all-black costume that covers his entire body with a robe and a flowing cape. There is another notable difference that you will find in this version of Skeletor. He manages to unlock the powers of Grayskull, unlike in the previous versions. It makes him a godlike entity and a villain with ultimate powers. He then discharges energy beams from his eyes, and it is by sheer luck that He-Man manages to make him lose his abilities. Just as he was about to kill He-Man, he was pushed off the cliff by a swing of He-Man's sword.
I'll be back.
The climax had an interesting scope for a sequel because it showed Skeletor emerging from the waters with a green skull, clearly surviving the fall.
Around! Put up with your stupidity only for this moment!
The New Adventures of He-Man, the infamous Reboot. This cartoon series was supposed to be a continuation of Filmation's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. We saw a whole new Skeletor here, along with a new costume as well.
Skeletor, this planet's original good person.
His evil ways, however, remain the same, and the story begins with him trying to fool the Galactic Guardians Captain Hydron and Lieutenant Flipshot by convincing them that he is the force of good that they will need to save their home planet, Primus. They had actually come looking for He-Man, but Skeletor managed to mislead them. As they are confused between Skeletor and He-Man, they send both of them into the future, and Skeletor immediately reveals his true nature.
Time for you nice folks to meet the real Skeletor!
The evil mutants attack Primus, and Skeletor strikes a deal with the mutant leader, where he would help him capture the planet in return for his help in killing He-Man.
Who's in charge?
Yes, Your Majesty.
Although the mutant leader named Flog was supposed to be the one in charge, we see Skeletor manipulating him and basically being the real leader behind all of this. This series, like the others, shows various attempts by Skeletor to destroy He-Man. He even succeeds in conquering Primus by deceiving the ruler into believing that the mutants want peace. As Flog takes charge of the planet and the mutants win, Skeletor is seen chasing He-Man and the rebellion against the Conquerors. Slowly, the entire planet rises up in revolt, and the mutants are forced to leave after a brief reign. There is also a romantic angle that was established between Skeletor and a mutant admirer named Krita. They were often seen flirting and dancing, but the romance never materialized into anything fruitful. Skeletor and the mutants launch another final attack on the planet, and though recapturing it briefly, they eventually lose. Skeletor wants a face-off with He-Man, but the latter uses the Power Sword to trap him and his lady love in a shuttle pod.
But it will be too late. All he'll find is me waiting for him.
This time, Skeletor was shown as far more maniacal, and we loved his wicked sense of humor. He generally had a relaxed attitude, but at times he would have these fits of rage that were scary. His relationship with Krita points to a human side beneath all the evil, and it is only fitting that in the end, Skeletor and Krita were trapped in a shuttle pod and exiled into space together.
Skeletor! No!
2002 animated series. In this version, it is confirmed that Skeletor is indeed Keldor, and Randor and Keldor look different due to different mothers. Skeletor was a warlord trained by Hordak, and he and his minions attacked the Hall of Wisdom. Captain Randor came ahead to offer some resistance, and a fierce fight broke out. Keldor fought him personally, but Randor got the better of him. Once defeated, Keldor tried to throw a vial of acid at him, but Randor used his shield and the acid was deflected on Keldor's face.
For crimes against the...
My face!
No.
Hordak managed to save his life, but all the damaged tissues had to be removed from his skull, and it left a stripped-off skeletal figure. This incident probably took away the last ounce of sanity that he had, so he returned to Eternia as the Tormentor. In this animated version, Skeletor doesn't go for Castle Grayskull straight away. He is intrigued when he finds He-Man and Man-at-Arms fighting to stop a giant fish monster heading towards it. He owed his life to Hordak, but he still destroyed his sanctuary so that he couldn't return. There are some interesting interactions with King Hiss, and Skeletor is shown to be far more competent than the previous versions.
And you can take that muscle-bound meddler as a bonus!
He still has comedic moments, but they are merely to add to his ruthlessness. He doesn't spare a thought for his followers and often bullies his minions. He might not have won any great victories, but he certainly made an impact with his homicidal tendencies.
We'll be in the Banshee jungle.
The Origin of Skeletor. The 2012 DC Comics finally shed some more light on the backstory of Skeletor. According to the narrative, Skeletor was supposed to inherit the throne, but his father King Miro made Randor the king instead. This was because Keldor was a half-blood whose blood was mixed with a beastly gar. All this caused Keldor to grow bitter, and while he was dying of a curse, he stabbed Randor and used his blood to turn into the devastating Skeletor. He had struck a deal with Hordak, and despite some emotional interactions with his brother, he doesn't change his mind about embracing his evil side. As a gift for all of this work, Hordak rewards him with his new title, Skeletor.
Why do I surround myself with fools? Even the robot.
Another unpublished Origin of Skeletor. If you thought there are already too many stories surrounding Skeletor, here is one more for you that was never even published. This one was created by Whitman Publishing, and it was found in 2009 that such a plan existed. Those of you who have never read the original Minicomics might have noticed several advertisements of Whitman Publishing. They worked with Mattel for the very first Minicomics, and if things went right, Mattel was about to make them work on a more complex reboot of the franchise. Unfortunately, the idea was dropped, and they went ahead with DC for the journey. So let us take a quick look at the story that was about to be a rather convincing origin for both He-Man and Skeletor. The protagonist, He-Man, is shown as a shepherd's son, and he is accompanied by a young woman named Shelda. She is in love with him, but is bound to Tez. As the couple is walking, they are interrupted by Tez and his friends, who start to bully the innocent shepherd's son, calling him He-Man in sarcasm. Tez even tries to coax him into fighting for Shelda, but he seems too weak to even lift a sword. Suddenly, Skeletor and his demonic minions attack the group, and Shelda falls victim to the fiery breath of Skeletor's dragon. Tez and his friends are slain with Skeletor's half of the power sword, and He-Man tries to fight him in vain. Skeletor stabs and shoots him with arrows before proceeding to interrogate him about the other half of the power sword. He remains defiant, and the demons leave him to be preyed upon by the wolves. As He-Man is left to die in his wounded and helpless state, Man-at-Arms arrives on his battle ram and drives away the wolf. He takes our protagonist to the capital city of Eternia, and an old healer named Moonspinner tries to heal the half-dead He-Man. This is when Moonspinner talks about the legend of a champion who was prophesied to be born out of fire, ice, dragon's flame, and blood-red snow. This champion would be able to access Grayskull's secrets, and he would become the Mighty King. A miraculous machine called Life Mold helps He-Man recover, and it also makes him the strongest man in the universe. The story introduces a fierce female warrior called Teela, who offers to be the emotional support for a grieving He-Man. The narrative also shows a giant battle cat that He-Man manages to subdue and ride. Towards the end of this unfinished tale, Skeletor and his demons attack Teela and He-Man while they are having a romantic moment in the woods. He-Man fights bravely, and Teela runs off to warn the people in the city. Just as the demons seem too powerful for He-Man alone, a growling sound is heard in the background, and presumably, the battle cat that they had released in the forest was coming back to defend He-Man.
Brainless idiots, you couldn't even beat a motley group of gnomes.
This version certainly offers an interesting take on He-Man, where he starts off being the weak guy and evolves into a powerful hero. We cannot help but draw parallels with the origin story of Captain America because the theme is awfully similar. It is a tragedy that the narrative wasn't preserved because, from the looks of it, the story deserved to have full-blown, detailed progress.
He-Man, and now is the time to finish it!
What remained common? While there have been so many changes to his stories, the core personality of Skeletor has largely remained the same. He is shown to be extremely cruel and dominating in all the versions, and his insatiable thirst for power makes him highly ambitious. He is always portrayed as an evil overlord who has no empathy for his own followers, let alone his opponents. The opportunistic villain would do just about anything to accomplish his goals.
I, Skeletor, am master of the universe.
Our final words. The fictional world of He-Man and Skeletor is fascinating, to say the least, and the charm of the villain is no less than the hero in this regard. He might have several backgrounds, but each one of them, even the unpublished one, is so interesting. Let us know in the comments section which origin story appeals to you the most. Irrespective of his varying story arcs, he was fun to watch in all his avatars. From his dark and serious portrayal to the more comical ones, Skeletor has been the toughest challenge for our mighty He-Man, and we owe our childhood to these marvelous creations.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.